It was the hardest decision that we ever had to make. Do we live out our dream of seeing the world, or do we stay at home to be with these little guys?
This is what we were struggling with just a few years ago. After years of dreaming and planning, we had an amazing opportunity. We could finally realize our dream of becoming full-time travelers. There was just one thing holding us back.
Actually, there were two things holding us back.
That's right, our two toy poodles that we absolutely adored.
So we wanted to get out there and see the whole world, but it wasn't going to be possible when we had to care for these two guys.
If you've ever dreamed of travel but thought that you couldn't, this video is for you. Maybe it's because you've got a furry friend like us. Maybe it's because you have kids, or maybe you have some other limitation that you feel is keeping you from your dreams.
In this video, we're sharing our story of wanting to live out our dream, but really feeling very torn about it. How could we possibly have the life that we wanted and bring our dogs along?
But first, welcome back. And if you're new around here, I'm Gillian and this is Stephanie. We retired early to travel full time. And if you're looking to see more of the world, you can subscribe for a new video every Sunday.
Not that long ago, we were expats working in Singapore. We originally moved to Asia for the big adventure, but that was many years ago. So eventually some of that magic and the novelty of being expats had kind of worn off. So yes, we were living in a tropical paradise, but we were also just regular people working stressful jobs. And of course, we love spending time with our two little poodles, Jasper and Huxley.
And we love to travel. At every opportunity, we'd go off and explore some other part of Asia. We'd just drop the dogs with a sitter and away we'd go. But of course we'd miss them and they'd miss us, and we'd always want to rush back to be with them.
All this time, we were dreaming of a different life. We had fantasies of just saying goodbye to our corporate jobs and finally seeing the world. We'd already had a taste of some pretty epic adventures. We'd hiked around Mont Blanc, we'd climbed Kilimanjaro, we'd trekked to Everest Base Camp, and we just wanted more.
We wanted to overland across Central Asia and motorcycle down Vietnam and visit the Antarctic. We wanted all these adventures, but they were all things that you can't really do when you have two little dogs with you.
You really can't. So we loved our dogs, but they were getting in the way. We saw ourselves as these epic adventurers out there in the world, but instead we were just really responsible dog parents.
But then something changed. What was just a fantasy for so long was finally within reach. All the time that we were working in Singapore, we had done a really good job saving and investing our money, and we were about to become financially independent. So this means that our investments could fund our lifestyle on an ongoing basis.
And that was it. That was our big moment. We could finally quit our jobs and do whatever we wanted to do with our lives. And of course, what we wanted to do was travel. But how could we do it with our two dogs? So we did have some experience of traveling with the dog. When we first moved from Canada all the way to Singapore, we had an older dog, and of course we had to bring her with us. But getting her to Singapore was really complicated. She was a bit too big to go with us in the cabin of the plane, so she had to fly as cargo. And the whole thing involved tons of paperwork, pet relocation brokers at each end of the trip, a 10-day quarantine in Singapore, and at the end, a very hefty price tag. So it was a stressful experience, it was expensive, and it was not something we ever wanted to repeat again. And we were thinking, if it's this difficult to move one dog to one country, how difficult is it going to be to take two dogs with us all around the world? But we had to try.
The logistics of traveling with two dogs to multiple countries can be totally overwhelming. First, how do we even fly with them? Well, when we dug in, it turned out that they're actually small enough to travel with us in the cabin of the plane instead of down with the luggage. So that turned out to be the easiest part to figure out. The rest was much more complicated. Now, not all airlines even accept dogs in the cabin, so we'd have to base our travel plans on the ones that would. We'd also have to get carriers and train our dogs to feel comfortable in there for 8 or 10 hours at a stretch.
Who's a good boy? Who's ready to fly? Both of you?
We'd also have to figure out all the entry requirements for every single country that we wanted to visit. And then we'd have to double and triple check everything so we wouldn't end up getting turned away at a border. We'd have to line up vaccinations, blood tests, health certificate, tons of other paperwork. And then what happens after we land? How do we find accommodations that are going to accept us with two little dogs? It was actually all too much. We were really feeling defeated and we hadn't even gotten started yet.
And then we started to discover other people traveling with their dogs just like we wanted to. They were bloggers like Gigi Griffiths with her dog Luna, or Monte Cristo, the traveling Chihuahua, or Schnitzel of Travel Annuity, who's been to 35 countries. But we still had our doubts. Yes, people were hopping on planes with their dogs, and we could too. But what about those big epic adventures we had in mind? What about the multi-day treks we wanted to do? Scaling mountains, exploring remote areas? Could we really climb the Matterhorn with a couple of toy poodles?
Well, we're probably not going to be climbing the Matterhorn with them, but maybe we could enjoy a few weeks of trekking through the Alps instead. So if we want to have it all, that life of adventure and a life with our dog, there have to be some compromises. We have to come up with different adventures, something that's going to be accessible for our whole little family. And that is actually the life we have today.
So in 2019, we bought a one-way ticket from Singapore to Poland, and we've been traveling full-time with Jasper and Huxley ever since. In fact, these guys have been to 10 countries.
Of course, the first couple months on the road, we're really just figuring out how to be travelers with our dogs. In our previous life, their biggest excitement was going to the beach on the weekend.
Now they had to get used to being in new environments and moving from one Airbnb to another. They had to learn how to ride the train for the first time. They were encountering new people, new dogs, new smells, and after we settled down in one place, it was off to the next.
After getting them used to the basics of travel, then our real adventures began.
So we headed to the turquoise coast of Turkey. This was the perfect place to stretch their little legs and put in some miles. So we set up a home base and tackled a few segments of the 500-kilometer Lycian Way.
Next, we headed to Lake Como in Italy, where they did some serious uphill hikes to take in those epic views.
Then we explored rock formations and ancient monasteries in northern Greece. And all four of us had a very romantic sunset together.
It was very romantic. In Croatia, we went up and over Mount Srd and capped the day with lunch in a local village.
Now, these might not be the adventures that we originally imagined. There was no scaling of mountains or whitewater rafting, but they were still amazing experiences.
The travel that we do with them is very different than what we would do if it was just the two of us. But actually, it's even better because we get to do it all together as a little family. So we've adjusted our dreams so that could be achievable for everyone.
And we've learned to focus on parts of the world where it's easier to travel with dogs, like Europe. I mean, in Italy, you can take your dog almost anywhere. We've also discovered that warmer climates are best. It's easier to enjoy a meal when we can all be together on a patio, and that gives us a good excuse to avoid the winter.
That's right. So ultimately, we've learned not just to dismiss a dream because the reality might look a little different from the fantasy. And this can apply to all kinds of would-be travelers. So whether you have a dog or a child or just some other circumstance that seems like it might hold you back. All it takes really is some resourcefulness and a little creativity.
Of course, traveling with our dogs isn't easy. It's not just the big adventures we need to worry about, it's also the everyday stuff. So making sure that we're taking care of their needs, creating a stable environment, all that stuff that you take for granted at home that's not so easy to achieve on the road.
Fortunately, in this next video, we've got the answers. So we share everything we've learned about what it's like to travel full-time with dogs. So you can go ahead and click on it now.